Snow fell relentlessly on Christmas Eve 1935, cloaking Elmwood Hall in a silent shroud. The Georgian Manor's festive lights glowed against the Cotswolds' dusk, beckoning Hercule Poirot, the meticulous Belgian detective, to a promised Yuletide respite. Invited by Captain Hastings, Poirot sensed tension beneath the holly and warmth. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, the stern patriarch, hosted his fractured family with forced joviality. As the grandfather clock struck 6, a scream shattered the festive air. Sir Reginald lay dead, poisoned by a mince pie. Isolated by the blizzard, the murderer lurked among them. Poirot's little grey cells stirred. The mystery begun. Chapter 1. The Snowbound Arrival. The snow fell in a relentless cascade on Christmas Eve 1935, cloaking the Cotswolds in a pristine, silent shroud. Elmwood Hall, a stately Georgian manor nestled amid rolling hills, glowed with the amber warmth of festive lights piercing the encroaching dusk. Its Palladian facade, framed by frost-laden oaks, stood resolute against the blizzard, a beacon of opulence in the desolate countryside. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mustache as impeccable as his reputation, sat in the back seat of a chauffeured Bentley, his gloved hands folded neatly over a silver-tipped cane. The tires crunched through the snow, carving a path up the winding drive. Poirot adjusted his scarf, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. He had accepted an invitation from his old friend Captain Arthur Hastings, a guest of the Hawthorne family, for what was promised to be a tranquil Yuletide respite. A holiday, mon ami, to rest the little grey cells, Hastings had written with his characteristic enthusiasm. Yet, as the manor loomed closer, an inexplicable unease stirred within Poirot. The air carried a chill beyond the winter's bite, a whisper of discord lurking beneath the festive veneer. The car halted before the grand entrance, where stone urns stood, sentinel, dusted with snow. A liveried footman, his breath clouding in the frigid air, opened the door. "Monsieur Poirot, welcome to Elmwood Hall," he said, his tone formal but strained, as if the weight of the evening pressed upon him. Poirot stepped out, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the snow, and surveyed the scene. Holly wreaths adorned the oak doors, their red berries vivid against the dark wood. But the windows flickered with an uneven light, as though the house itself were restless. Inside, the grand foyer enveloped him in warmth. A chandelier glittered above, casting prismatic reflections across marble floors. The scent of pine and beeswax mingled with the faint sweetness of mulled wine drifting from a distant room. Hastings emerged from the throng, his ruddy face breaking into a grin. "Poirot, old chap, you've made it through the blizzard," he exclaimed, clapping the detective on the shoulder. "Come, meet the Hawthorns. A fine lot, though. Well, a touch peculiar, perhaps." His voice lowered, a conspiratorial glint in his eye. "Family tensions, you know. Nothing you can't sniff out." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Mon ami, the little grey cells are never truly at rest." He followed Hastings into the drawing room, where a towering Christmas tree, bedecked with glass baubles and tinsel, dominated the space. A fire roared in the hearth, its crackle a counterpoint to the soft strains of Silent Night emanating from a gramophone. The room buzzed with the assembled guests, their voices a tapestry of forced cheer and veiled barbs. At the center stood Sir Reginald Hawthorne, the patriarch and industrial magnate whose steel empire spanned half of England. A robust man in his 60s, his broad shoulders strained against a tailored dinner jacket, and his silver hair gleamed under the gaslight. His voice, deep and commanding, carried over the chatter as he addressed his son Jonathan with thinly veiled contempt. "You do well to show some ambition, boy, instead of draining my cellars." Jonathan, a lanky man in his 30s, with flushed cheeks and a petulant scowl, clutched a glass of sherry, his eyes darting to the floor. "Father, must we air this now?" he muttered, the words slurred slightly. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, Sir Reginald's wife, glided through the room in a gown of emerald silk, her delicate features taut with nervous energy. She flitted from guest to guest, her laughter a touch too bright, her hands fluttering like moths. "Monsieur Poirot, what a delight," she trilled, her eyes flickering toward her husband. "We're so honored to have a detective of your renown among us." Poirot bowed, noting the tremor in her fingers as she adjusted a strand of pearls. "Madame, the pleasure is mine," he replied, his accented voice smooth as velvet. Eliza Hawthorne, the couple's daughter, stood by a frosted window, her auburn hair catching the firelight. In her early 20s, she possessed a quiet intensity, her gaze fixed on the swirling snow outside. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she murmured to no one in particular, though Poirot sensed her words masked a deeper longing. Hastings whispered, "She's smitten with some artist chap. Penniless, naturally. Sir Reginald's furious." Victor Blackwood, Sir Reginald's business partner, paced near the fireplace, his sharp features etched with agitation. His dark eyes flicked towards Sir Reginald, a silent storm brewing. "Business troubles?" Poirot inquired lightly of Hastings. "Oh, quite," Hastings replied under his breath. "The company's in debt, and Blackwood's been muttering about forged contracts. Sticky situation." Mrs. Agnes Croft, the housekeeper, oversaw the servants with a hawkish eye. Her grey hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her black dress rustled as she moved, serving mince pies with mechanical precision. Her lips were a thin line, her demeanor one of long-suffering duty. Poirot observed, her pause near Sir Reginald, her gaze lingering a fraction too long. The grandfather clock in the corner struck 6, its chimes resonant and solemn. The room seemed to hold its breath, the festive air strained by unspoken grievances. Sir Reginald raised his glass, his voice booming, "To family, to fortune, and to the empire we've built." The toast elicited murmurs of agreement, but Poirot noted the undercurrent of discord. Jonathan's sullen sip, Eliza's distracted nod, Lady Evelyn's forced smile, Blackwood's clenched jaw, and Mrs. Croft's icy stare. As the guests dispersed to mingle, Poirot's keen eyes catalogued every detail, the placement of a silver tray, the flicker of a curtain, the faint smudge on a wineglass. His little grey cells hummed, sensing the prelude to a drama yet to unfold. Hastings leaned in, his voice low. "Rather a tense bunch, eh? Sir Reginald's got enemies, I'd wager." "Enemies, mon ami," Poirot replied, his tone deceptively mild. "Or merely motives waiting to surface." He sipped his sherry, the liquid warming his throat, but his mind was elsewhere, dissecting the room's dynamics. The Hawthorns were a microcosm of ambition, resentment, and secrets, each thread weaving a tapestry of potential treachery. The gramophone switched to "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen," its melody weaving through the chatter. Lady Evelyn approached Blackwood, her hand brushing his sleeve in a gesture too intimate for mere acquaintance. Jonathan drained his glass and stumbled toward the decanter, ignoring his sister's disapproving glance. Eliza slipped away, her footsteps soft on the Persian rug, her destination unclear. Mrs. Croft retreated to the shadows, her presence as unobtrusive as it was omnipresent. Outside, the snow deepened, sealing Elmwood Hall in a cocoon of isolation. No carriage could navigate the drifts. No telephone line could pierce the storm's interference. The manor was a world unto itself, its inhabitants bound by the whims of fate, and perhaps, Poirot mused, by darker designs. A sudden gust rattled the windows, drawing gasps from the guests. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. Sir Reginald laughed, a hearty sound that rang hollow. "A mere storm, nothing more," he declared, but his eyes scanned the room, as if searching for a threat within. Poirot's gaze followed a servant, carrying a tray of mince pies, their spiced aroma mingling with the pine-scented air. He noted the careful arrangement, the precise cuts, yet something about the tray seemed amiss, a detail too subtle to pinpoint yet. His instincts, honed by years of unraveling human deceit, prickled. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, nudged him. "What's that look, Poirot? You've spotted something already, haven't you?" "Perhaps, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice a low murmur. "The stage is set, the players assembled. But the script, that remains hidden." He twirled his moustache, his mind racing through possibilities. A family fractured by greed, love, and betrayal. A patriarch whose power invited envy. A house where every corner might conceal a secret. The clock ticked onward, its rhythm a heartbeat in the quieting room. Guests drifted toward the dining hall, their voices fading into a murmur. Poirot lingered, his eyes catching a fleeting movement, a shadow slipping behind a velvet curtain. An illusion, perhaps, or a harbinger of intent. Then, from the dining hall, a piercing scream shattered the Yuletide peace. Glasses clinked as they fell, footsteps pounded, and voices rose in panic. Hastings bolted forward, Poirot following with measured steps, his calm belying the urgency within. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "the curtain rises." The scream had come from Lady Evelyn, who stood trembling beside the dining table. Sir Reginald lay slumped in his chair, his face ashen, his hand clutching a half-eaten mince pie. The festive lights seemed to mock the scene, their glow illuminating a tableau of horror. Death had arrived at Elmwood Hall, uninvited yet inevitable. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers probing delicately. A faint, bitter scent clung to the pie, cyanide, unmistakable to his trained senses. The room spun with chaos. Lady Evelyn's sobs, Jonathan's stunned silence, Eliza's stifled gasp, Blackwood's muttered curse, and Mrs. Croft's rigid composure. The constable would not arrive for hours, trapped by the snow. The murderer, Poirot knew, was among them. As the wind howled outside, a distant sound, a low, unearthly moan, echoed through the manor. Superstition or subterfuge? Poirot's eyes gleamed with resolve. The game was afoot, and the little grey cells would not rest until the truth emerged from the shadows. Chapter 2. Whispers by the Hearth. The drawing-room of Elmwood Hall glowed with the fire's amber light, its warmth a deceptive counterpoint to the chill of suspicion settling over the guests. Hercule Poirot settled into a plush armchair, his sharp eyes scanning the assembly as he sipped a glass of sherry, its sweetness tinged with the promise of secrets. The scent of pine from the towering Christmas tree mingled with the spicy aroma of mince pies, but the festive air felt brittle, like glass poised to shatter. Captain Hastings, ever the genial companion, leaned close, his voice a conspiratorial murmur. "Quite a gathering, Poirot. I dare say there's more to this lot than meets the eye." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his alertness. "Mon ami, the little grey cells are never idle. In every glance, every word, there lies a clue. His gaze swept the room, cataloguing the players in this unfolding drama. The Hawthorne family, their guests, and the omnipresent housekeeper moved like pieces on a chessboard, each with motives yet to be uncovered. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, the patriarch whose lifeless form now haunted their thoughts, had dominated the room only moments before. His booming voice had filled the space, railing against modern indolence with a pointed glance at his son Jonathan. The young man, in his 30s, lounged by the hearth, his flushed cheeks and unsteady hands betraying a fondness for the bottle. Father always did love a spectacle, Jonathan muttered, draining his sherry glass. His petulance hinted at deeper resentments, debts perhaps, or a thwarted inheritance. Poirot noted the tremor in his grip, a detail to revisit. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, elegant in her emerald silk gown, flitted among the guests like a nervous bird, her laughter too shrill, her eyes darting toward Victor Blackwood. The business partner, a lean man with sharp features and a restless demeanor, paced near the gramophone, where O Come All Ye Faithful played softly. His dark suit seemed to absorb the light, and his fingers twitched as if itching to resolve some unseen grievance. Hastings whispered, "Blackwood's been at odds with Sir Reginald. Something about forged contracts and dwindling profits. The company's on shaky ground, I hear." Poirot nodded, his mind filing the information. Financial ruin was a potent motive. Eliza Hawthorne, the family's dreamer, stood apart, her auburn hair glowing under the chandelier. She clutched a locket, her gaze distant as she spoke of her suitor, a penniless artist named Charles. "Father called him a parasite," she said softly to a sympathetic guest, her voice tinged with defiance. "But love isn't measured in pounds and shillings." Her father's threat to disinherit her hung unspoken, a motive as old as family itself. Poirot observed her wistful expression, wondering if rebellion could turn deadly. Mrs. Agnes Croft, the housekeeper, moved with silent efficiency, her black dress a stark contrast to the festive decor. She served mince pies from a silver tray, her hawkish eyes missing nothing. Her lips were a thin line, her demeanor one of rigid control. Yet Poirot sensed a smoldering intensity beneath her stoic facade. When she paused to adjust a holly sprig, her fingers lingered, as if tracing a memory. "A loyal servant," Hastings remarked, "but I'd wager she knows every secret in this house." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Loyalty could mask vengeance. The grandfather clock chimed 6:30, its sonorous tones a reminder of time's relentless march. The guests gathered for pre-dinner drinks, their voices weaving a tapestry of forced civility. Sir Reginald had raised his glass moments earlier, his toast, to family and fortune, laced with an edge that cut through the merriment. Now, with his death casting a pall, the words echoed like a taunt. Poirot's mind churned, reconstructing the evening's prelude. The mince pie, the scream, the bitter scent of cyanide. Details that demanded order and method. He approached Lady Evelyn, his tone courteous but probing. "Madame, your husband seemed preoccupied this evening. Was there perhaps a matter weighing upon him?" Her eyes widened, a flicker of panic betraying her composure. "Oh, Reginald was always gruff before dinner," she said, her laugh brittle. "Business worries, nothing more." But her fingers twisted a lace handkerchief, and Poirot noted a faint chemical scent clinging to it. A clue, or mere coincidence? Blackwood, overhearing, interjected sharply. "Business worries. Ah, the man was bleeding us dry with his schemes." His voice carried a venom that drew glances, and he quickly retreated behind a forced smile. Poirot's gaze followed him, sensing a man teetering on the edge of desperation. Jonathan, meanwhile, stumbled slightly as he reached for another drink, his cufflink glinting, a silver hawk, engraved with the family crest. It caught Poirot's eye, a misplaced detail in the chaos of the evening. Eliza, noticing her brother's state, sighed. "He's drowning his failures, as always," she murmured, her tone equal parts pity and scorn. Mrs. Croft glided past, her tray now empty. "Dinner awaits, sirs," she said, her voice flat, but her eyes locking briefly with Poirot's. Was it a challenge, or mere scrutiny? He filed it away, his mind a ledger of human subtleties. As the guests moved toward the dining hall, Poirot lingered, his attention drawn to a velvet curtain that swayed slightly, though no breeze stirred the room. A red herring, perhaps, a servant's carelessness, or a deliberate distraction. He stepped closer, his cane tapping softly on the marble floor, but found nothing amiss. Yet the sensation of being watched prickled his senses, a reminder that danger lurked in the shadows. Hastings rejoined him, his brow furrowed. "Poirot, this place feels like a powder keg. Everyone's hiding something." "Indeed, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice low. "But the truth hides in the silences, between their words." He glanced at the gramophone, its needle scratching faintly as the carol ended. The room felt quiet, save for the fire's crackle and the distant howl of the wind. Then, from the corridor leading to the dining hall, a sharp clatter broke the stillness. A silver tray, perhaps, dropped in haste. A servant's error, or something more sinister. Poirot's eyes gleamed, the game already unfolding. As he moved to investigate, a shadow slipped from the room, unseen by all but the little grey cells, poised to unravel the mystery. Chapter 3. The Poisoned Chalice. The dining hall of Elmwood Hall shimmered with festive opulence, its long mahogany table aglow under silver candelabras. A towering Christmas tree, adorned with crimson ribbons and glass ornaments, cast delicate shadows across the damask tablecloth. The scent of roasted goose and mulled wine filled the air, but the warmth of the season was overshadowed by the spectre of death. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold, his keen eyes absorbing every detail, as the guests, shaken by Sir Reginald Hawthorne's collapse, hovered in stunned silence. Captain Hastings, pale but resolute, knelt beside the fallen patriarch, checking for a pulse that no longer beat. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his voice a calm anchor amid the chaos. "The method is poison, but the hand that delivered it remains unseen." He knelt beside Sir Reginald, whose ashen face was frozen in a grimace of agony, a half-eaten mince pie clutched in his rigid hand. The bitter almond scent of cyanide hung faintly, unmistakable to Poirot's trained senses. Lady Evelyn's scream still echoed in memory, her emerald gown now crumpled as she clung to a chair, sobbing. "Reginald." "Oh, how could this happen?" she wailed, her voice cracking like thin ice. Jonathan Hawthorne stood frozen, his flushed cheeks drained of color, his sherry glass trembling in his hand. "Father." "Poisoned," he stammered, his eyes darting to the others, as if seeking an accusation to deflect. Eliza Hawthorne, her auburn hair disheveled, pressed a hand to her mouth, her locket glinting as she whispered, "This can't be real." Victor Blackwood, the business partner, loomed near the table, his sharp features taut with something akin to triumph. Or was it fear? "A tragic loss," he said curtly, but his tone lacked conviction. Mrs. Agnes Croft, the housekeeper, stood apart, her black dress blending into the shadows, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the scene with hawkish precision. Poirot's little grey cells whirred, cataloguing the tableau. The dinner had begun with strained civility, Sir Reginald carving the roast with authoritative strokes, his voice dominating the conversation. To progress, he had toasted, though his eyes lingered on Jonathan with disdain. The young man had argued heatedly about his allowance, his voice rising over the clink of crystal. "You treat me like a child," he'd snapped, drawing gasps. Eliza had pleaded for her independence, mentioning her artist suitor, Charles, only to earn her father's scorn. "A leech, that boy," Sir Reginald had barked. Blackwood, meanwhile, had hinted darkly at embezzlement, his words cutting. Some men build empires on lies. Lady Evelyn had deflected with nervous laughter, her hands fluttering over her pearls. Mrs. Croft, ever silent, had refilled glasses from a decanter of mulled wine, her movements precise but mechanical. Now, as Poirot examined the pie, he noted its flaky crust, dusted with sugar, hiding a deadly secret. "The poison was in the pea, n'est-ce pas?" he mused aloud, his accented voice drawing attention. Hastings nodded grimly. "Only Sir Reginald ate from that batch. The rest are untouched." Poirot's gaze flicked to the silver tray, now overturned in the chaos, its contents scattered across the table. A single pie bore a faint smudge, a fingerprint, perhaps, or a careless mark. "Mes amis," Poirot announced, rising with deliberate calm. "We must preserve the scene. No one leaves this hall." His tone brooked no argument, and the guests, still reeling, obeyed. He beckoned Hastings to the sideboard, where the decanter stood. "The wine, mon ami? Did all partake?" Hastings confirmed it, but the pie, served only to Sir Reginald, was the anomaly. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A targeted act, then, but by whom? Lady Evelyn, regaining composure, dabbed her eyes. "It's unthinkable. Who would do this?" Her voice wavered, but Poirot caught a fleeting glance toward Blackwood, whose jaw tightened. Jonathan, pacing, muttered, "Father had enemies. Business rivals, perhaps." Eliza clutched her locket, her voice barely audible. He was cruel, but... "Murder?" Blackwood scoffed. "Enemies. He made his own, with his greed." Mrs. Croft, silent until now, spoke softly. "The master was not without fault, but this is unholy." Her words, pious yet cold, sent a shiver through the room. Poirot's attention shifted to the kitchen door, slightly ajar. "Madame Croft, who prepared the pies?" he asked, his tone deceptively mild. She stiffened. "I did, sir, with the cook, but they were untouched until served." Her eyes met his, unflinching, but Poirot sensed a guarded truth. He filed it away, noting the faint chemical scent on Lady Evelyn's handkerchief from earlier, perhaps a red herring or a clue to her nerves. Hastings, ever practical, whispered, "The snow's too deep for anyone to have slipped in from outside, Poirot. The killer's here." Poirot nodded, his mind tracing the evening's timeline. The pie had been placed before Sir Reginald at precisely 7:15, moments before his collapse. The tray had passed through Mrs. Croft's hands, but others had lingered near the table, Jonathan refilling his glass, Eliza adjusting a napkin, Blackwood pacing restlessly. Lady Evelyn had been seated, yet her fluttering hands suggested agitation. A servant, trembling, approached. "Sir, the pantry window was found open. Could someone—" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Show me." The window, barely a foot wide, was crusted with snow, its latch loose. A red herring, perhaps, an attempt to suggest an outsider's hand. But the drifts outside were unbroken, betraying no footprints. "No." Poirot murmured. The danger lies within. As the guests huddled, whispering accusations, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the dining hall. The Christmas tree's candles wavered, as if mocking the tragedy. Poirot's gaze lingered on the smudged pie, the overturned tray, the faces of the guilty and innocent alike. The truth hides in the smallest details, he said softly, his voice a beacon in the growing dark. Then, from beyond the manor's walls, a low, unearthly howl pierced the night, chilling the blood of all who heard it. Was it the wind, or something more sinister lurking in the snowbound dark? Poirot's moustache twitched, his resolve unshaken. The game was afoot, and the little grey cells would not rest. Chapter 4. Shadows of Suspicion. The blizzard raged on, sealing Elmwood Hall in a cocoon of snow and secrets. In the study, where Sir Reginald Hawthorne's body now lay beneath a white sheet, Hercule Poirot stood motionless, his sharp eyes scanning the scene. The room, heavy with the scent of old leather and wax, was lit by a single lamp, casting long shadows across oak-paneled walls. Captain Hastings, his face drawn, hovered near the door, while the local constable, a ruddy-faced man named Inspector Reed, trudged in, his boots tracking snow. Nasty business, this, Reed muttered, shaking his head. Cyanide, you say, Mr. Poirot? Précisément, Poirot replied, his accented voice steady as he gestured to the mince pie, now sealed in a cloth for evidence, swift, merciless, and deliberate. His gloved fingers traced the air, as if sketching the crime's contours. The pie, laced with cyanide, had been Sir Reginald's alone, a fact that pointed to a calculated act. The kitchen, inspected earlier, yielded no obvious poison source, but Poirot noted a missing vial from the butler's pantry, a detail that whispered of opportunity. Mes amis, Poirot announced, turning to the gathered suspects, who had been corralled into the study under Reed's watchful eye. We begin with order and method. Who had access to the pie? His gaze swept over the assembly. Lady Evelyn, her emerald gown now wilted, her eyes red-rimmed. Jonathan, fidgeting with his cufflink, his face a mask of unease. Eliza, clutching her locket, her expression torn between grief and fear. Victor Blackwood, his sharp features taut with defiance, and Mrs. Agnes Croft, rigid as a statue, her hands clasped tightly. Lady Evelyn spoke first, her voice trembling. I was with Reginald all evening. I saw nothing. Nothing. Her handkerchief, faintly stained, fluttered in her grasp. Poirot's eyes lingered on it, recalling its chemical scent. A clue or a distraction? Madame, he said gently, your devotion is noted, but secrets often hide in plain sight. She flinched, her gaze darting to Blackwood, who stood silent, his jaw clenched. Jonathan, emboldened by sherry, blurted, Father's debts were crushing us. He lent me money, yes, but only to keep me quiet. His admission drew gasps, and Poirot's moustache twitched. Debts, Monsieur Hawthorne, are a motive most compelling, he said, noting the young man's flushed cheeks. Had desperation driven him to patricide? Eliza, her voice soft but firm, interjected. Father threatened to cut me off because of Charles. But I'd never... Her words trailed off, her fingers tightening around her locket. Poirot recalled her dreamy defiance. Love could be a powerful spur, but to murder... He filed the thought away. Blackwood, pacing, snapped. Reginald forged contracts to save his empire. I'd have exposed him. But kill him? Absurd. His vehemence rang hollow, and Poirot noted his restless hands. A man cornered by betrayal might strike first. Mrs. Croft, her voice low, spoke last. I served the master faithfully, Despite past grievances, she paused, her eyes glinting with suppressed emotion. He dismissed me years ago, then rehired me out of pity. Her words carried a bitter edge, and Poirot's mind seized on the hint of old wounds. Vengeance, perhaps, simmered beneath her stoic facade. Hastings, ever loyal, whispered, "They're all hiding something, Poirot. But that vial, someone took it deliberately." Poirot nodded, his mind reconstructing the evening. The pantry window, found ajar, was a red herring. The unbroken snow outside ruled out an intruder. Yet footprints in the garden, leading to the greenhouse, intrigued him. He excused himself, donning his coat to follow the trail. The tracks, faint under fresh snow, ended abruptly at the greenhouse door, as if the maker had vanished. "A clever ruse," Poirot murmured, his breath clouding in the frigid air. Had someone staged the prints to mislead? Returning to the study, Poirot questioned the servants. A maid, trembling, admitted seeing Jonathan near the pantry before dinner, his cufflink catching the light. "He seemed agitated, sir," she whispered. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The cufflink, smeared with residue in Chapter 2, now gained weight. Yet Lady Evelyn's handkerchief, Blackwood's pacing, and Eliza's locket all tugged at his instincts. Mrs. Croft's herbal knowledge, gleaned from years in service, included cyanide sources, prunus seeds, perhaps, from the garden. "The motive hides in the mist," Poirot said to Hastings, his voice low. "But the little grey cells will part it." He paced, his cane tapping rhythmically, as the suspects watched, their faces a gallery of guilt and fear. The clock struck midnight, its chimes heavy in the oppressive silence. The storm outside howled, a reminder of their isolation. No one could leave, and the murderer was among them. Poirot's gaze fell on a misplaced glove near the study door, black, leather, monogrammed with an E. Eliza's, Evelyn's, or another deception? He pocketed it discreetly, his mind racing. The glove, like the footprints, felt staged, a distraction from the truth. "The killer overreaches," he mused, his voice barely audible. As the group dispersed to their rooms under Reed's orders, a creak echoed from the upstairs landing. A door, perhaps, opened in stealth. Poirot's head tilted, his senses alert. "Hastings," he whispered, "the night is not yet done with its secrets." Was it a restless guest, or the murderer plotting their next move? The shadows deepened, and the little grey cells burned with purpose. Chapter 5. The grey cells, awakened dawn, broke over Elmwood Hall, its grey light filtering through frost-etched windows, casting a pallor over the snowbound manor. The blizzard had eased, but the drifts still trapped the inhabitants, their secrets locked within these walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, its shelves heavy with leather-bound tomes, the air thick with the scent of old paper and lingering cigar smoke. A fire crackled faintly, its warmth no match for the chill of murder. Captain Hastings, bleary-eyed but loyal, hovered nearby, his notebook open. "Poirot, it's been a long night. Any closer to the truth?" "Patience, mon ami," Poirot replied, his accented voice a beacon of calm. "The little grey cells awaken, and the puzzle begins to form." His gloved fingers twirled his moustache as he surveyed the room where the suspects had been summoned. The library's high ceiling and somber portraits seemed to judge the assembled. Lady Evelyn, her emerald gown replaced by morning black, her eyes darting nervously. Jonathan slouched in a chair, his cufflinks glinting. Eliza, clutching her locket, her face pale. Victor Blackwood, pacing with restless energy. And Mrs. Agnes Croft, her severe bun tighter than ever, her gaze unyielding. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his tone commanding silence. We reconstruct the evening with order and method. The mince pie, laced with cyanide, was prepared by Madame Croft and served to Sir Reginald alone. Yet the pantry window stood ajar. A diversion on? He paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. The snow betrays no intruder. The killer is among us. Gasps rippled through the room, but Poirot's eyes missed nothing. Lady Evelyn's trembling hands, Jonathan's flushed avoidance, Eliza's bitten lip, Blackwood's clenched fist, Croft's stoic mask. Hastings, eager to assist, had searched the bedrooms at Poirot's behest. Found this in Eliza's room, he whispered, producing a crumpled love letter addressed to Blackwood, not her artist suitor, Charles. Its passionate tone suggested scandal. "It's a forgery," Eliza cried, her voice breaking. "I'd never betray Charles." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind catalogued the letter's elegant script. Too perfect, perhaps, a red herring meant to mislead. Jonathan's cufflink, found near the decanter and smeared with residue, drew Poirot's scrutiny. "Monsieur," he said, fixing Jonathan with a piercing stare. "You were seen near the pantry. Care to explain?" Jonathan stammered. I was fetching more sherry. I didn't touch the pies." His protest rang hollow, and Poirot noted the sweat beading on his brow. A motive of debts and resentment loomed large. Lady Evelyn's handkerchief, faintly chemical-scented, resurfaced in Poirot's memory. "Madame, your kerchief? Perhaps it held more than tears?" She gasped, clutching her chest. "I spilled perfume, nothing more." Her denial was swift, but her eyes flicked to Blackwood, hinting at shared secrets. An affair, perhaps, or a darker pact. Mrs. Croft's alibi faltered under Poirot's gentle probing. "You argued with Sir Reginald hours before dinner, no?" he asked. She stiffened, her voice cold. "A trifling matter, servant's duties." Yet the maid's whisper of a heated exchange, overheard in the study, suggested otherwise. Croft's knowledge of cyanide from garden prunus seeds weighed heavily. Had old grievances turned deadly? Blackwood, defiant, interjected. "You're chasing shadows, Poirot. Reginald's enemies were legion, creditors, rivals." His vehemence drew suspicion, and Poirot recalled his pacing near the table. "Monsieur Blackwood, your anger betrays you," he said smoothly. "What did Sir Reginald hold over you?" Blackwood's silence spoke volumes. Poirot's mind wove the clues. The missing vial, the smudged pie, the open window, the footprints ending at the greenhouse. He returned to the glove from Chapter 4, monogrammed with an E. Eliza or Evelyn, or a servant's sleight of hand. "The killer plants distractions," he murmured to Hastings. "But the truth lies in the mundane." A misplaced glove, a forged letter, red herrings to cloud the trail. He instructed Reed to search the servants' quarters, where a bottle of cleaning fluid, potentially cyanide-laced, turned up, unlabeled. Careless, Poirot mused, or deliberate. The fluid's presence pointed to the kitchen, under Croft's domain, but its accessibility implicated all. He envisioned the timeline. The pie baked, left briefly unattended, served with precision. Opportunity abounded, but motive remained elusive. Outside, the snow glittered under a weak sun, and Poirot ventured to the greenhouse, where the footprints had vanished. A faint scratch on the door's latch suggested forced entry, yet no poison was found within. Another ruse, or a clue overlooked. He pocketed a stray leaf, prunus perhaps, his mind racing. Back in the library, tensions simmered. Jonathan accused Eliza of plotting for her inheritance, while she retorted, "You'd sell your soul for father's money." Lady Evelyn sobbed, Blackwood sneered, and Croft remained impassive, her silence louder than words. Poirot's voice cut through the din. The psyche reveals what hands conceal. We are close, mes amis. His confidence masked the puzzle's complexity, but his little grey cells churned relentlessly. As the clock struck noon, its chimes heavy with portent, a sudden shot rang out from the attic, a sharp crack that froze the room. Reed bolted upstairs, Hastings trailing, while Poirot remained, his eyes scanning the suspects. A distraction, perhaps, he said softly, or a warning. The group's faces betrayed fear, guilt, or calculation. Was the shot an accident, a suicide, or a murderer's desperate ploy? Poirot's moustache twitched, his resolve unshaken. The truth approaches, but the shadows deepen. As footsteps echoed above, the library's silence grew oppressive, a prelude to revelations yet to come. Chapter 6. Veiled Alliances. Midday light filtered through Elmwood Hall's frosted windows, a feeble glow against the relentless snow that imprisoned the manor. The air in the conservatory, humid with the scent of hothouse orchids and damp earth, buzzed with tension as Hercule Poirot interrogated the suspects in pairs, seeking cracks in their carefully curated facades. The gunshot from the attic, revealed by Inspector Reed as a misfired hunting rifle, likely a servant's blunder, had left nerves frayed, but Poirot's little grey cells remained unshaken. "The truth, mes amis," he said, his accented voice smooth as polished oak, "hides in the silences between alliances." Captain Hastings, ever diligent, stood by with his notebook, his brow furrowed. "That shot rattled them, Poirot. Someone's desperate to throw us off." Poirot nodded, his cane tapping softly on the tiled floor, his eyes scanning the glass-walled room where Lady Evelyn and Victor Blackwood now faced him. The conservatory's lush greenery seemed to mock the barren secrets within. Lady Evelyn, her mourning black stark against her pale skin, twisted her handkerchief, still faintly chemical-scented. "Monsieur Poirot, I swear I was with Victor when the pie was served." Her voice cracked, betraying more than grief. Blackwood's sharp features tightened, his dark eyes flashing. "She's right. We were discussing business in the study." His hesitation hinted at intimacy, and Poirot's moustache twitched. "An affair, perhaps?" he asked lightly. Lady Evelyn gasped, her cheeks flushing. "Reginald was cruel, yes, but I'd never—" She trailed off, confessing. Victor promised escape from his tyranny, but murder, never. Blackwood's silence was damning, his motive, romance or revenge, unclear. Next, Poirot summoned Jonathan Hawthorne, whose dishevelled appearance and bloodshot eyes spoke of a sleepless night. "Monsieur, your cufflink near the decanter, your presence in the pantry, explain," Poirot pressed. Jonathan slumped, his voice hoarse. "I forged checks, yes, to cover gambling debts. Father knew, but he paid them to avoid scandal." His admission pointed to shame, not murder, but Poirot noted his trembling hands. Had desperation pushed him further? Eliza Hawthorne entered alone, her auburn hair loose, her locket glinting. Hastings had found a draft of Sir Reginald's will in her room, favouring Jonathan, a motive for her to act. "Father planned to disinherit me for Charles," she said, her voice steady but pained. "But that will, it's not mine. Someone planted it." Poirot's eyes narrowed, recalling the forged love letter from Chapter 5. Another red herring, or a deeper plot? Her passion for her artist suggested defiance, not violence, yet love could twist into betrayal. Mrs. Agnes Croft, summoned last, stood rigid, her black dress absorbing the light. Madame, your argument with Sir Reginald, what was its nature? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Her lips thinned. A private matter, long, buried. Under pressure, she revealed a shocking truth. Sir Reginald had fathered her sister's child decades ago, a bastard disowned and left to ruin. He broke her, Croft whispered, her eyes burning. I forgave, but never forgot. Her motive, vengeance, loomed large, her herbal expertise a deadly tool. Poirot's mind churned, weaving clues. The missing cyanide vial, the smudged bye, the planted will, the prunus leaf from the greenhouse. He led Hastings to the cellar, where a search uncovered a poisoned rat trap, its bait laced with cyanide, a mirror to the murder method. Clever, Poirot murmured, but too convenient. The trap, accessible to all, felt like another red herring, designed to scatter suspicion. He examined the vial's smudged fingerprints, none clear enough to accuse. The killer is meticulous, mon ami, he told Hastings, but not flawless. A new discovery emerged, a hidden passage from the study to the servants' quarters, its entrance concealed behind a bookcase. Dust on the floor showed recent use, footprints too faint to identify. Espionage, perhaps, Poirot mused, or a murderer's path. The passage linked Croft's domain to Sir Reginald's last moments, but others could have known it. Jonathan's debts, Eliza's disinheritance, Blackwood's betrayal, Lady Evelyn's affair, all motives swirled, yet none snapped into focus. Back in the conservatory, Poirot confronted Blackwood alone. Your ledger, monsieur. Hastings found it. It shows Sir Reginald's fraud, yet you profited. Why conceal it? Blackwood's eyes flashed. I'd have exposed him, but I needed his empire intact. His ambition hinted at a deeper game, but murder? Poirot reserved judgment. Lady Evelyn, questioned again, admitted to overhearing Jonathan and Croft arguing in the kitchen before dinner. Jonathan was furious about money, she said, and Agnes. She spoke of justice. The revelation tightened the web, implicating both, yet Poirot sensed manipulation. Was Lady Evelyn deflecting? Eliza, in a private moment, showed Poirot a telegram from Charles, urging elopement, dated the day before the murder. He wanted me free, she whispered, but I stayed. The telegram's timing was suspicious, another thread in the tangled skein. As evening fell, the conservatory's glass walls reflected the flickering candles, casting ghostly shapes. Poirot paced, his little grey cells alight. The motives are many, Hastings, but the truth is singular. He recalled the glove, the footprints, the forged letter. All distractions, yet each pointed to a calculated mind. The clock struck 6, its chimes a somber echo of the previous night's toast. The suspects, dismissed to their rooms, whispered among themselves, alliances forming and fracturing. Poirot's gaze lingered on the passage's entrance, its secrets beckoning. Then, from the darkened halls, a faint whisper drifted, a murmured conversation too soft to discern. Was it a conspiracy, lovers' secrets, or the murderer plotting anew? Poirot's eyes gleamed, his resolve ironclad. The shadows speak, mon ami, he said to Hastings, and we shall listen. Chapter 7. Footprints in the Frost. The snowbound grounds of Elmwood Hall glittered under a weak noon sun, the air sharp with frost, as Hercule Poirot ventured outside, his polished shoes crunching through the drifts. The blizzard had paused, leaving a crystalline stillness that belied the turmoil within the manor. Wrapped in his heavy coat, Poirot followed the faint footprints from Chapter 4, their edges softened by fresh snow, leading from the pantry to the frozen pond. Captain Hastings trailed behind, his breath clouding in the chill. Poirot. "These tracks are a devil to follow," he grumbled. "They vanish like a ghost." "Précisément, mon ami," Poirot replied, his accented voice steady, his eyes fixed on the trail. "But ghosts leave traces, and the little grey cells see what the eye cannot." The footprints, erratic and shallow, circled the pond, where a scrap of fabric floated on the ice, a silk scarf, emerald green, monogrammed with an E. Lady Evelyn's. Poirot retrieved it with his cane, noting its chemical scent, matching her handkerchief. A clue, or another distraction, he mused, his moustache twitching. Back inside, the library's warmth enveloped them. The fire's crackle, a stark contrast to the frozen grounds. Poirot summoned the suspects, their faces etched with exhaustion and suspicion. Lady Evelyn, confronted with the scarf, paled. "It was stolen from my room," she insisted, her voice trembling. "I've not been outside since yesterday." Her denial rang desperate, and Poirot noted a glance toward Victor Blackwood, whose sharp features tightened. An affair, perhaps, or a shared secret. Hastings, ever diligent, produced a ledger from Blackwood's luggage, uncovered during a discreet search. "It shows Sir Reginald embezzled funds," he whispered to Poirot. "Blackwood profited, but he's hiding something." Poirot confronted the man, his tone deceptively mild. "Monsieur, your silence about this fraud. Why?" Blackwood's eyes flashed. Reginald's schemes were his own. "I kept quiet to save the company." His ambition hinted at deeper motives, but murder. Poirot reserved judgment. Jonathan Hawthorne, slouched in a chair, faced scrutiny next. A servant had seen him near the kitchen before dinner, his cufflink smeared with residue, implicating him further. "I was drunk, not plotting," he protested, his voice slurred. "Father's loans kept me afloat, but he humiliated me." His gambling debts loomed as a motive, yet his disarray suggested carelessness, not cunning. Poirot's eyes narrowed, weighing his guilt against his incompetence. Eliza Hawthorne, her auburn hair framing a pale face, clutched her locket tightly. "Charles sent a telegram." "Yes," she admitted, referring to the elopement urge from Chapter 6. "But I stayed for father, despite his threats." Her love for her penniless artist was clear, but the will draft favoring Jonathan, found in her room, cast a shadow. "It's not mine," she insisted, her voice breaking. Poirot suspected another forgery, a red herring to divert blame. Mrs. Agnes Croft, rigid in her black dress, faced Poirot's probing gaze. "Madame, your knowledge of prunus seeds, cyanide source, is most intriguing," he said, his voice soft but piercing. Croft's lips thinned. "I tend the garden, sir. Nothing more. The master's sins were his own." Her revelation of Sir Reginald's cruelty, disowning her sister's child, burned with suppressed rage. Vengeance, Poirot mused, could fester for decades. He reconstructed the timeline. The pie baked by Croft, left briefly unattended. The vial missing from the pantry. The hidden passage from Chapter 6, linking study to servants' quarters. The rat trap's cyanide, another distraction, pointed to no one definitively. Yet the scarf, the footprints, the forged will, all suggested a meticulous killer planting false trails. "The mind behind this is clever," Poirot told Hastings, "but the little grey cells are cleverer." Venturing to the pond again, Poirot examined the ice. The scarf's placement felt staged, its scent too convenient. "A red herring," he declared, "to implicate Lady Evelyn." He traced the footprints back, finding a faint sled track beneath the snow, unused, buried by the storm. A planned escape, thwarted by weather. The greenhouse, where tracks ended, yielded no new clues, But the prunus leaf from chapter 5 lingered in his pocket, a silent accusation. Inside, tensions flared. Jonathan accused Blackwood of sabotage, while Eliza snapped at her brother's greed. Lady Evelyn, tearful, clung to Blackwood, who brushed her off coldly. Croft, silent, watched with hawkish eyes. Poirot's mind wove the clues: motives of debt, love, betrayal, and vengeance. Means in the cyanide vial. Opportunity in the crowded dining hall. A new discovery surfaced: a suicide note in Sir Reginald's hand, found tucked in a desk drawer. "I cannot bear the shame of my debts," it read, but the ink was fresh, the script too precise. "Planted post-mortem," Poirot said, his voice low. "The killer overreaches, mon ami." The note, another red herring, aimed to close the case prematurely. As night deepened, the manor's lights flickered, casting eerie shadows. The suspects retired, their whispers trailing like smoke. Poirot stood by the library window, gazing at the snow. "The truth is near, Hastings," he said, his voice a quiet promise. "But the killer plays a dangerous game." Then a flicker caught his eye, a ghostly figure at the window, cloaked in white, vanishing into the snow. A trick of the light, or a human hand sowing fear. Poirot's eyes gleamed, the little grey cells alight with purpose. Chapter 8. Unraveling Threads. The library of Elmwood Hall, its oak shelves heavy with the weight of secrets, glowed faintly under the flicker of gas lamps as evening settled over the snowbound manor. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his diminutive frame commanding the room, his sharp eyes dissecting the assembled suspects. The fire crackled, casting restless shadows across their faces, each a mask of guilt, fear, or defiance. Captain Hastings, notebook in hand, whispered, "They're unraveling, Poirot. That ghostly figure last night has them spooked." Poirot's moustache twitched, his voice low. "Mon ami, fur loosens tongues, and the little grey cells listen." "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his accented tone slicing through the tension. "The threads of this murder are tangled, but not unbreakable. Let us cut through the distractions." He held up the emerald scarf from chapter 7, its E monogram glinting. "This, planted to implicate Madame Evelyn, was worn backward, deliberate, no?" Lady Evelyn gasped, her mourning black trembling. "I told you it was stolen." Her eyes flicked to Victor Blackwood, whose sharp features hardened. Poirot's gaze lingered. Their affair, confirmed in chapter 6, provided an alibi. They were together during the poisoning, but alibis could be crafted. Next, he addressed the footprints to the pond, revealed by Inspector Reed's men to have been made with reversed boots, a ruse to suggest an outsider. "The killer seeks to mislead," Poirot said, his cane tapping rhythmically, "but the snow betrays only those within." The suspects shifted uneasily, their glances darting like trapped moths. Jonathan Hawthorne, slouched and bleary, faced scrutiny over his cufflink, smeared with residue near the decanter. "Monsieur, your debts were settled by your father," Poirot noted, recalling Jonathan's admission. "Why then, your agitation," Jonathan's voice cracked. "He humiliated me, kept me on a leash." His motive, resentment, was clear, but his drunken clumsiness argued against precision. Poirot filed it away, his mind turning to the forged will from chapter 6, favoring Jonathan. "Planted, perhaps, to cast suspicion on Mademoiselle Eliza?" he mused aloud. Eliza, her auburn hair framing a pale face, clutched her locket. "That will isn't mine," she insisted, her voice fierce. "And that letter to Blackwood, another lie." The forged love letter from chapter 5, Poirot deduced, was Blackwood's handiwork, meant to divert blame. Confronted, Blackwood sneered. I'd no need to kill Reginald. His fraud sustained me. The ledger from Chapter 7, showing Sir Reginald's embezzlement, confirmed Blackwood's profit, yet his defiance masked unease. Was he too cunning, or merely cornered? Mrs. Agnes Croft, rigid in her black dress, met Poirot's gaze with icy composure. Madame, your grudge, Sir Reginald's cruelty to your sister, burns still, no? Her lips thinned. I served faithfully, despite his sins. Poirot recalled her arthritis, noted in Chapter 4, which made precise tampering unlikely. Yet her knowledge of cyanide from prunus seeds remained damning. Her alibi, overseeing the kitchen, crumbled when a servant confirmed she'd slipped away before dinner. A momentary absence, she said coldly, but Poirot's eyes gleamed. He turned to the suicide note from Chapter 7, its fresh ink a blatant forgery. This too is a red herring, he declared, holding it aloft. Planted to halt our search. The note's precise script matched the forged letter, suggesting a single hand, Blackwood's or another's. Poirot's mind wove the clues: the missing vial, the hidden passage, the rat trap's cyanide, the prunus leaf. Each pointed to a calculated mind, yet one detail stood out: a mince pie crumb on Croft's apron, unnoticed until now, caught in the lamplight. The smallest things betray, he murmured to Hastings. A new discovery emerged. A servant found a hidden diary in Sir Reginald's study, tucked behind a portrait. Its pages revealed his fear of betrayal, not by family, but by a trusted ally. Blackwood plots against me, he'd written, and Croft knows too much. The diary cast new light, implicating both, yet Poirot sensed manipulation. Was it authentic, or another planted clue? Tensions erupted. Jonathan accused Eliza of greed, while she retorted, "You'd kill for father's fortune." Lady Evelyn, tearful, clung to Blackwood, who pushed her away, snarling, "Enough of this farce." Croft remained silent, her eyes like flint. Poirot's voice cut through the chaos. The killer weaves a web, but the threads unravel. He paced, his cane a metronome, as the suspect's facades cracked. The clock struck 8, its chimes heavy with foreboding. The manor's isolation weighed heavier, the snow outside a silent jailer. Poirot's mind raced. Lady Evelyn's alibi held. Jonathan's incompetence argued against him. Eliza's love seemed genuine. Blackwood's ambition was tempered by profit, and Croft's vengeance burned cold. Yet the crumb, the diary, the passage, clues converged, pointing to a singular truth. As the group dispersed, Reed stationed to watch them, Poirot lingered by the fire, his little grey cells alight. "We are close, mon ami," he told Hastings, his voice a quiet promise. The killer's mask slips. He recalled the ghostly figure at the window, a distraction or a desperate act. Then, from the study, a faint rustle broke the silence. A drawer opened, papers shuffled. Poirot's eyes widened, his cane poised. "Hastings, the truth stirs." Was it a servant, a suspect, or the murderer covering their tracks? The shadows deepened, and the game grew perilous. Chapter 9. The gathering storm. Christmas Day dawned over Elmwood Hall with an ironic brightness, the snow reflecting a pale sun that did little to warm the tension within. The drawing room, its festive garlands now drooping, hummed with unease as Hercule Poirot orchestrated a dramatic confrontation. The suspects, Lady Evelyn, Jonathan, Eliza, Victor Blackwood, and Mrs. Agnes Croft, sat in a semicircle, their faces etched with dread and defiance. The fire crackled, its glow casting flickering shadows across the velvet drapes, while Captain Hastings stood by, his notebook worn from use. "Poirot," They're at breaking point, he whispered. This is it, isn't it? Poirot's eyes gleamed, his accented voice resonant. Mon ami, the storm gathers, and the truth will break. He stepped forward, his cane a silent metronome, his moustache impeccably poised. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his tone commanding silence. The murder of Sir Reginald was not passion, but calculation. Let us unravel the final threads. The suspects stiffened, their breaths held as if awaiting a verdict. He held up the diary from Chapter 8, its pages accusing Blackwood and Croft. This suggests betrayal, yet its ink is too fresh, a forgery, like the suicide note. The room gasped, Blackwood's sharp features twisting in protest. Lies. I'd no need to kill him, he snapped, but Poirot's raised hand silenced him. Your ledger, monsieur, shows you profited from Sir Reginald's fraud. Yet you hid it. Why? Blackwood's silence spoke volumes, his ambition a lingering motive. Turning to Lady Evelyn, Poirot noted her alibi with Blackwood during the poisoning. Madame, your affair is confirmed, but your handkerchief's chemical scent intrigues. She clutched her chest, her voice trembling. It's perfume, I swear. Her denial wavered, and Poirot sensed fear, not guilt. The emerald scarf, a red herring from Chapter 7, was planted to implicate her. But by whom? Jonathan, his cufflink damning evidence, slumped under Poirot's gaze. Monsieur, your debts were settled. Yet you lingered near the pantry. Why? Jonathan's voice cracked. I was drunk, confused. I didn't touch the pies. His resentment was clear, but his incompetence argued against precision. The forged will favoring him, Poirot deduced, was meant to shift blame to Eliza. Eliza, her auburn hair framing a defiant face, gripped her locket. That will, that letter, they're not mine, she cried, her voice fierce. Charles wanted me free, not dead. The telegram from Chapter 6, urging elopement, suggested desperation. But Poirot saw love, not murder, in her eyes. Mademoiselle, your passion is noted, but innocence must be proven, he said gently. Mrs. Agnes Croft, rigid in her black dress, met Poirot's stare with icy resolve. Madame, your sister's ruin by Sir Reginald fuels a deep grudge, he said, recalling her confession. Your access to prunus seeds, your absence from the kitchen, most telling. Croft's lips thinned. I served. Nothing more. Yet the means pie crumb on her apron, noted in Chapter 8, loomed large, a careless slip. Poirot paced, weaving the clues. The cyanide vial from Blackwood's briefcase, smudged but incriminating. The hidden passage from Chapter 6, used for stealth. The footprints and scarf, deliberate distractions. The sled track from Chapter 7, a thwarted escape plan buried by snow. The killer planned meticulously, he said, his voice rising, but the little details betray. He paused, letting the silence weigh on the room, the suspect's eyes darting like trapped prey. A new clue emerged. Hastings found a gramophone record, paused mid-carol during dinner, hiding a recorded argument. Played now, it revealed Sir Reginald's voice. You'll regret crossing me, Agnes. Croft's cold reply followed. Justice comes, sir. The room froze, Croft's face impassive, but her hands trembling. A private dispute, she said, but Poirot's eyes gleamed. The record, overlooked, was no red herring. It tied Croft to the crime's prelude. Accusations erupted. Jonathan pointed at Eliza, shouting, she wanted father's money for her lover. Eliza retorted, you're the greedy one, Jonathan. Blackwood accused Croft of vengeance, while Lady Evelyn, fainting theatrically, collapsed into a chair, her performance drawing Poirot's scrutiny. Madame, Your dramatics conceal more than they reveal, he said sharply. Inspector Reed, stationed at the door, prepared for arrests, his gruff voice urging calm. Poirot's mind raced. The vial pointed to Blackwood, but his prophet argued against murder. Lady Evelyn's affair cleared her timing. Jonathan's drunkenness made precision unlikely. Eliza's love seemed genuine. Croft's motive, vengeance for her sister's ruin, burned brightest, the crumb a silent accusation. Yet one thread remained loose. Poirot recalled the rustling papers from Chapter 8, suggesting a final piece hidden in the study. The truth is near, he told Hastings, his voice a quiet thunder. But the killer plays one last card. The clock struck 9, its chimes heavy with portent, the room's tension a palpable storm. As Reed moved to escort the suspects, a sharp crash echoed from the study, a glass shattering, followed by a stifled cry. Poirot's skin froze, his eyes narrowing. Hastings, the final act begins. Was it a clumsy servant, a desperate suspect, or the murderer destroying evidence? The shadows tightened, and the little grey cells burned with purpose. Chapter 10, The Yuletide Revelation. The drawing room of Elmwood Hall, its festive trappings now a mockery of the tragedy within, pulsed with anticipation as Hercule Poirot stood center stage, his diminutive frame radiating authority. The snow outside had ceased, leaving a crystalline silence that amplified the tension. The suspects, Lady Evelyn, Jonathan, Eliza, Victor Blackwood, and Mrs. Agnes Croft, sat in a taut semicircle, their faces a gallery of dread and defiance. Captain Hastings, notebook clutched tightly, whispered, "This is it, Poirot. The truth at last." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his moustache impeccably poised. "Mon ami, the little grey cells have unraveled the knot." "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his accented voice a symphony of deduction. "The murder of Sir Reginald Hawthorne was a crime of cold precision, masked by chaos. Let us reveal the killer." The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the velvet drapes, as the suspects leaned forward, breathless. Inspector Reed stood by the door, his gruff presence a silent promise of justice. Poirot held up the mince pie crumb from Chapter 8, a speck of evidence overlooked by all but him. "This crumb found on Madame Croft's apron is the key," he declared. Gasps rippled through the room, Croft's steely facade faltering. He paced, his cane tapping rhythmically, weaving the clues. The cyanide vial from Blackwood's briefcase, smudged to obscure guilt. The hidden passage from Chapter 6, linking study to servants' quarters. The forged diary and suicide note, planted to mislead. The emerald scarf and reversed footprints, red herrings to scatter suspicion. "First, the distractions," Poirot said, his tone sharp. The scarf, monogrammed E, implicated Madame Evelyn, but its backward wear betrayed its planting. The footprints, made with reversed boots, suggested an outsider, impossible in the snow. The diary and note, forged in precise script, aimed to close the case prematurely. Lady Evelyn, trembling in her mourning black, exhaled, her affair with Blackwood cleared by their alibi during the poisoning. Blackwood's sharp features relaxed slightly, his profit from Sir Reginald's fraud outweighing his motive. Jonathan, slouched and pale, faced Poirot's gaze. "Monsieur, your debts and cufflink near the decanter raised suspicion, but your drunkenness lacks the precision for this crime." Jonathan's shoulders sagged, relief warring with shame. Eliza, clutching her locket, was next. "Mademoiselle, your love for Charles and the forged will pointed to greed, but your telegram reveals loyalty. not murder. Eliza's eyes brimmed with tears, her innocence affirmed. Poirot turned to Mrs. Agnes Croft, her black dress a shadow against the festive glow. Madame, your motive burns brightest, he said, his voice low but piercing. Sir Reginald's seduction of your sister, decades ago, led to her suicide, a wound you never forgave. Croft's lips thinned, her hands trembling. The gramophone record, Poirot continued, referencing Chapter 9, captured your threat of justice. The crumb on your apron, unnoticed, ties you to the poisoned pie. He reconstructed the crime. Croft, with access to prunus seeds from the garden, distilled cyanide in the kitchen, slipping it into Sir Reginald's pie during service. The open pantry window, a ruse to suggest an intruder, was her doing, as were the footprints and scarf, planted to confuse. The hidden passage allowed her to move unseen, planting the diary and note to divert blame. You planned an escape by sled, Poirot said, recalling Chapter 7. But the blizzard thwarted you. Croft's eyes flashed, her composure cracking. He deserved eternal silence, she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. He ruined her, cast her aside like refuse. The room froze, her confession a thunderclap. Lady Evelyn sobbed, Jonathan gaped, Eliza clutched her locket, and Blackwood's sneer faded. Reed stepped forward, his voice gruff. Mrs. Croft, you're under arrest. Poirot's voice softened, but his resolve was iron. Madame, vengeance is a cold master. Justice, not you, decides fate. Croft's shoulders slumped, her defiance ebbing as Reed led her away. The Manor exhaled, its oppressive air lifting like snow melting under sunlight. Hastings, awestruck, clapped Poirot's shoulder. Brilliant old chap. That crumb. How did you know? Poirot smiled enigmatically. The little grey cells, mon ami, see what others overlook. Order and method prevail, even on Christmas. He glanced at the Christmas tree, its candles now steady, as if saluting the resolution. The suspects dispersed, their faces a mix of relief and grief. Lady Evelyn, freed from suspicion, leaned on Blackwood, their affair no longer a secret. Jonathan, sobered by the ordeal, vowed reform. Eliza, clutching her telegram, spoke of joining Charles. The Manor, once a prison of secrets, felt lighter, its shadows retreating. Poirot stood by the window, gazing at the snowbound grounds, now serene under a clearing sky. The truth restores balance, he murmured, his cane resting lightly. The crash from Chapter 9, investigated by Reed, was a servant dropping a glass in panic. No more, a final distraction dispelled. As the clock struck 10, its chimes a gentle farewell to the storm, Poirot twirled his moustache. Mon ami, he said to Hastings, the Yuletide mystery is solved, and peace descends. Outside, the stars emerged, a quiet promise of renewal. Elmwood Hall, scarred but cleansed, stood ready for a new dawn.